everyone, and happy Sunday night and happy 1st of November. Hard to believe that we are already 2 months into the semester and, this crazy COVID time as we all adjust. I know many of us are in the virtual school, or many of us are even in regular school, kind of doing this whole back and forth between online and in-class learning. It's been a massive adjustment, and I know it's taken its toll, and we're all feeling the stretch, but you're doing great, and we're already into November. Time is flying. Actually, midterms are just a few weeks away as well, so that's kind of exciting because it's a nice indicator, midway point to where you want to get to. On that note, you will obviously be receiving mark updates as we go through the assessments, and you received a mark update on Friday, and that included your infographic in Katie's Kitchen case study. Just make sure that you're really taking the time to read my feedback, because my expectations at midway in the semester is that students are really taking that feedback and applying it to their future assignments, meaning that I'm expecting growth from you. So if I'm not seeing that you're taking that feedback and applying it to future projects, then your marks are going to reflect that as we move through the second half of this semester. Okay, especially since this week we are doing a case study. So that information and feedback from Katie's Kitchen, I'll be expecting you to apply it to this case. Okay. So with that being said, let's go through the agenda this week. There's really only a couple of things to discuss, and that is the unit test and the case study. And I'll be going through the case study in detail in this little lesson here. So please listen, it's very, very important. Okay, so on Tuesday, you are going to have a test released to you at 8 a.m. Okay, so as of 8 a.m. on Tuesday, you'll notice that if you go into Brightspace under quizzes, there's a unit test provided for you that you can do. I've given you Monday to study for the test because it's extraordinarily important that you do study. Students in an e-learning class sometimes think that because they're taking the test online, they don't need to study. If I were in a regular classroom right now, I would ask you, why is this not the right method? And the question is there because the reality is you need to know your content if you're going to be successful on the test. Even though you have your notes there and I'm not there to look at you and make sure that you're not looking at your notes, they're there. You may think, well, I don't need to study because all my notes are here in front of me. But here's the deal. You have 75 minutes to complete this test. It's timed, and you don't have time after it to, spend more time. It's timed just like a regular test would be. And if you haven't studied and you're spending all of your time flipping through your notes trying to find the answers, you're going to run out of time. Students who do not study, it always shows on their test results, okay? So it is imperative that you study. It is so important, and that's why I've been emphasizing throughout the first unit that you take notes of every slide deck and PowerPoint that we have, as well as the readings, so that you have your notes all together and you can just study from those notes prior to the test, okay? So please study for the test. Your marks will reflect it if you don't. Tuesday, the test goes live at 8 a.m. However, you do have all week to write the test. So you can choose to write it on the Friday if you wanted to. You could write it Saturday night at 8 p.m. if you wanted to. But when you open that test, as of that moment, you will have 75 minutes to complete it. You can't go in and out of the test. So choose a time that you think works best for you when you feel ready to write the test. Also keep in mind that you have a case study to do this week. So if you're going to write the test on Saturday, but you haven't started the case study, you're not setting yourself up for success at all. So you really need to manage your time between these two significant tasks this week. My suggestion would be that you get the test done as soon as possible. Then it's done, you don't have to think about it, and all you need to focus is on your case study. Either you do that or you do the reverse. You start the week and you do the case study, and you get the case study done by midweek, and then you focus on the test. Both the case study and the test are due at 8 a.m. on Monday morning without exception, okay? So again, you only have the two tasks this week, but they're two large tasks. They're weighted highly. Tests are worth typically 5%. Case studies are worth about 8% of your overall mark. So you have to spend your time diligently. Do not leave this to the final hour. I tell you, if you do, you will not like the results, okay? So the test, like I said, you'll have from Tuesday at 8 a.m. to Monday at 8 a.m. to write that in a 75-minute period block, okay? You also have to triage your time with the case study. So I'm going to go through the case study now with you. This has been put up in Dropbox, so it's available to you now. You can get started on it now if you would like to. All right, the case here is on Sophie's Toy Creative Solutions. I'm not going to read through the case because you can do that. So you're going to have a case. You're going to have to go through the case with a fine-tooth comb and try to identify the key problem areas, and then from that, try to identify what the key solutions are. But most importantly, I'm going to be asking that you put this in a case method. So you're going to be following a writing process where you're going to be breaking it down into sort of a business report, what we call it a case report. So this document here highlights how you do that. So we'll go through it now. Again, I'm just going to ask that you go through this with your own fine-tooth comb and ask me any questions that you might have about it as you go through it this week, okay? So as it explains here, case method is a process where business students will record research in detail, trying to figure out, basically a solution to a specific occurrence, a business occurrence. It's an excellent way to really give you an opportunity to orient yourselves as to what you would do in a management position, making management decisions without the obvious repercussions, okay? So you'll also obviously have a lot of these post-secondary if you pursue business courses. Case studies are done in business reporting formatting. You are expected to have a title page, table of contents, page numeration, Arial size 12 or Times New Roman, and you're going to be using headings and subheadings throughout the document, okay? So obviously I expect that you use full sentences no matter what, but you can break things down in tables, charts, bullet points to organize your thoughts, okay? It shouldn't be just in one lump at all. It has to be clearly broken up. You can imagine that a business executive, a CEO, has very little time to actually go through documents. So if they have a 100-page case report, they want everything clearly organized. The table of contents outlines the sections, and the sections correspond to your headings and subheadings. Okay, so when you're going through the case, Sophie's Toy Creative Solutions, you're going to be going through a number of steps. And you're going to be following these steps in order to solve the case. Okay, so the first step is outlining everything that you know about the case. Okay, so this is where I ask you to go through the case with a fine-tooth comb. If you are the manager in this situation and you're trying to figure out what the problem is, then you have to know every nuance of what's happening in the organization. So this is where you're going to be giving details of the situation, the individual people involved, the stakeholders involved, right? So these are all concepts we've covered in class already. Really, you're listing any detail that you think would be important for you to make a decision in this case. Okay, so you might want to talk about the age of the people involved, again, the different stakeholders, the target audiences, the office makeup, the scheduling, the different pay grids, client attitudes, personalities, education, anything that's in the case that you think would be important and relevant to identifying the problem. You can, again, use your managerial competencies to decide how you're going to organize this. But the first heading, obviously, is going to be the what do we know, right? So this is where you decide, are you going to put everything here in bullet points, in a table, in a chart? Are you going to write a full paragraph? It's up to you. Okay, but ultimately you want it to be clear and you want it to be full of information that you think is relevant. The second step is identifying the problem. Okay, and I want to point out too, your second heading or subheading does not have to be step 2, what is the problem? It can be anything. It could be problem identification. It can be problem analysis, whatever you decide again. So allow some room for creativity and individuality in how you design your case, okay? But in this section, this is where you're going to be outlining as many problems, like what are the significant issues? And this is where a lot of students had a little bit of challenge, I should say they had challenges in the first case, really clearly identifying the problem. So the problem shouldn't be a lack of, managerial skills. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. What managerial skills are lacking specifically, right? What's happening? Be as specific and detailed in your problem analysis as you can be. Step 3, problem decision making. So from this list of problems, you have to try to decide what's the major issue. What could actually be the root cause of all the secondary problems? So typically when you have a list of problems, there are a number of problems that come from the main problem, okay? So this is where you have to be a bit of a detective and decide, okay, what are the, significant problems, the primary problems, and what are the secondary problems? And how can we summarize this into one problem statement? You would do this if you were a scientist creating a hypothesis, okay? Step 4 is when you take that problem, that key problem that you've identified or that key hypothesis, and you begin to brainstorm solutions. In this section, I want you to try to come up with as many solutions to the problem as you can. Typically, we look for 3 tangible solutions, and each solution has to be explained in detail. So that means the who, what, when, where, how. Okay, again, this was a major area of weakness in your Katie's Kitchen case study, which again, I say area of weakness, but this is how you learn. It was step 1. Now you're into the second phase, so I expect more this time, right? So the solutions just were not clearly outlined. You didn't have enough detail to really tell me, well, what's happening? What are you going to do with this solution? And how does it actually solve the key problem? So again, you can decide how you're going to break this down. Are you going to do it in a chart? Are you going to do some bullet points? Are you going to do it in subheadings? So who, subheading when, subheading how? You have to decide, okay? Headings and subheadings can be kind of, you can decide how you want to format that. Typically what happens with a heading is you'll boldface a heading, and then you might indent a subheading and underline it just to make sure that it's visually different. But again, it's up to you. And there's no real right way of doing it. You just want to think about the overall look and how organized it looks from the reader's perspective. And then step 5 is when you're going to be clustering your ideas. Okay, so clustering your ideas basically means that you are going to take those 3 solutions and you're going to start to mind map them out. So, you have to ultimately decide what your overall solution is going to be. It can't be all 3 solutions because that's just too much. So how are you going to decide what solution is best? So typically what we do is we mind map our solutions into 3 categories. Seen it could be good, radical idea. Seen it means like, okay, solution has been done before. It's kind of, textbook. It's not novel. It could work, but it may not necessarily give us the results we're looking for. Could be good is, oh, this could be the right one. And then radical idea is this one's really outside the box. We don't really typically do this. It's solving the problem in a creative way. There probably are risks involved, but it actually could work, okay? And again, these are just categorizing it. There's no right or wrong, but it's allowing you to see the variances in your solutions. And then from that, you create a list of pros and cons for each possible alternative. Again, in this section, you probably want to chart your work and break it into point form. Okay, I wouldn't want to see long, lengthy paragraphs for this. You want to be clear and specific in what you're doing. Okay, so you might want to create a chart, whatever kind of flow diagram you want to do, some sort of, table of some sort with bullet points. And then, of course, step 6 is the solution recommendation. This is when you decide ultimately what you think your solution should be. Most students will say, well, once I've clustered my ideas, I've realized that a little bit of solution 1 and a little bit of solution 2 is actually best. Of course you can do that. That's the idea of clustering and mind mapping, is that you can actually start to cherry pick what you think is best given your problem identification. Okay? So again, each of your case studies are going to be completely different. Really, how you format it's going to be different. How you break things down is going to be different. It's based on your own individual managerial writing style. It's going to challenge you. It's going to make you feel a little uncomfortable because it's not a formula. It's a bit of a formula, but it's not. But that's because you're in grade 12 academic and you've got to apply that inquiry work and inquiry learning into your work, right? There's not a textbook to follow here. You're learning as you go. Okay, so we only ever learn from vulnerability. We only ever learn from feeling uncomfortable. So if you're feeling uncomfortable as you're working through this, it's normal. It's good. But you're always welcome to ask me for help and reach out, okay? Just don't reach out 24 hours before it's due and say, can you look mine over? Sunday night, not gonna have time, all right? So be organized in how you manage your work, okay? So I just added some notes here for you too. As you can see, with case methodology, some of your work is going to be generated in point form, chart form, mind maps, right? So it doesn't all have to, please don't do all paragraphs. That's mind-numbing for you and for me, okay? Use headings, subheadings, to clearly organize your work, have that table of contents to tell me where each section is, okay? Include a title page with the title of the assignment, your name, my name, and due date according to Chicago style citations. And of course, make sure that you do elaborate where you think you need to. So that, for example, the solution paragraph really should be in paragraph form. This is where you definitely need to make sure that you have that strong conclusion. Okay? Again, as always, if you have questions, you can email me. It's been posted in Dropbox, and you'll see the rubric there too if you're curious. But really, like, the best thing to do is just following the steps in the actual document to make sure that you have everything that you need. Okay. And like I said, the case study is there for you to go through. I'm not going to go through that because you can read it, but if you have questions, then make sure that you ask. Don't forget to do your participation activity. Of course, that's our attendance for the week. We start Unit 2 on Monday. And that's it for the week, okay? So as you guys can see, 2 pretty significant things. Definitely make sure that you're chunking your work, and don't push it to the end of the week. You will suffer, and I don't want to see that, okay? Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you online.